The ship moved through the darkness of space like a small fish swimming toward a gathering of whales. Ambassador Yuna stood at the observation window and watched the massive space station grow larger with each passing minute. The Galactic Council station was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It floated in the center of neutral space, a place where all the great powers of the galaxy came to talk, trade, and make decisions that affected trillions of lives. Yuna was 52 years old. She had spent 30 years working in diplomacy. She had helped end wars on Earth. She had brought peace to nations that had fought for centuries. But nothing in her long career had prepared her for this moment. Today, she would speak for all of humanity. Today, she would ask the galaxy to accept Earth as an equal partner. Captain Taiho walked up beside her. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had commanded Earth's first deep space exploration fleet. He had seen things that most humans could only dream about. Alien worlds, strange stars, life forms that defied imagination. But he had also seen how the galaxy looked at humans. He had seen the disgust in alien eyes, the mockery, the dismissal. "Are you ready?" He asked. Yuna did not look away from the window. "I have been ready for 20 years. The question is whether they are ready to listen." The ship docked at the station. Yuna and Taiho walked through long corridors made of metal that shimmered like liquid silver. Alien species passed them on all sides. Some were tall and thin, with skin like blue glass. Others were short and wide, covered in thick fur. A few floated through the air, their bodies made of something that looked like smoke and light. None of them looked at the humans. It was as if Yuna and Taiho did not exist. They were invisible, unimportant, just another primitive species, come to beg for scraps from the table of the great powers. The council chamber was a massive room with seats arranged in a circle. Each seat belonged to one of the 12-member species of the Galactic Council. These were the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. They had traveled between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They had built empires that spanned thousands of worlds. They controlled trade, technology, and military power that Earth could not begin to match. At the center of the chamber was a small platform. This was where those who wished to address the council would stand. Yuna walked to the platform alone. Taiho took his place in the observation area, where visitors and lesser species were allowed to watch but not speak. The council members looked down at Yuna from their high seats. The Varan representative was a creature with 4 arms and skin the color of dark purple. His name was Magistrate Bell, and he was known throughout the galaxy as a being of great cruelty and even greater pride. He had been against human membership from the very beginning. Deadl, Federation representative, was a female with scales like green metal and eyes that glowed with inner fire. She was called High Speaker Nyx, and she controlled an empire of 300 worlds. Deadl were warriors. They respected only strength, and in their eyes, humans had no strength worth respecting. Yuna took a deep breath. She had practiced her speech 1,000 times. She knew every word by heart. But as she looked up at those alien faces, she felt something cold settle in her stomach. These beings did not see her as an equal. They saw her as an insect, a pest, something to be crushed or ignored. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Yuna began. Her voice was steady. Her words were clear. "I come before you as the representative of Earth and all humanity. For 100 years, we have watched the stars. We have dreamed of joining the great community of intelligent life that exists beyond our small world. Today, I ask you to open your doors to us. I ask you to accept Earth as a member of this council." Magistrate Bell made a sound that might have been laughter. It was an ugly sound, wet and mocking. "You ask us to accept you? You, who have only just learned to travel between stars. You, whose technology is so primitive that your ships would be considered toys by our children. Yuna kept her face calm. We are young, Magistrate. That is true. But youth is not weakness. We have much to offer. Our scientists are creative and bold. Our engineers solve problems in ways that other species have never considered. Our people are hardworking and determined. Given the chance, we could contribute greatly to the prosperity of the Council. High Speaker Nix leaned forward in her seat. Her scales caught the light and threw green reflections across the chamber. Contribute? What could you possibly contribute? Your military is laughable. Your economy is insignificant. You control one world. One. The Kel Federation controls 300. The Varan Empire controls 500. You are nothing. Numbers are not everything, Yuna said. The strength of a species is not measured only in worlds conquered or weapons built. It is measured in spirit, in courage, in the willingness to face the unknown and never give up. Humans have these qualities in abundance. Another council member spoke. He was a being made entirely of crystalline structures, and his voice sounded like chimes in the wind. Pretty words, Ambassador. But words do not power starships. Words do not feed populations. Words do not win wars. What evidence do you have that humanity deserves a place among us? Yuna gestured to Taiho. Captain Taiho led our first exploration fleet into deep space. In 5 years, he discovered 47 new planetary systems. He made peaceful contact with 6 species that were previously unknown to the Council. He did this with ships that you call primitive. Imagine what we could do with access to your technology. Imagine what we could discover. Magistrate Bell waved one of his forehands in dismissal. Discoveries mean nothing if you lack the power to protect them. The galaxy is not a safe place, Ambassador. There are dangers in the darkness between stars. Predators, swarms, ancient evils that even we do not fully understand. If we accept you into the Council, we become responsible for your protection. And frankly, you are not worth protecting. The words hit Yuna like a physical blow. She had expected resistance. She had expected skepticism. But the open contempt in Bell's voice was something she had not been prepared for. He was not just rejecting Earth. He was declaring that humans had no value, that their lives were worthless. We do not ask for protection, Yuna said. Her voice was harder now. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves. Give us access to your trade routes. Allow us to participate in your markets. Let us show you what humanity can achieve. High Speaker Nix shook her head. And when you fail? When your primitive ships are destroyed by pirates? When your colonies are wiped out by diseases you do not understand? When your people starve because they cannot compete with species that have been trading for 10,000 years? What then, Ambassador? Will you come crying to us for help? Will you drain our resources trying to save your pathetic species from its own weakness? We will not fail, Yuna said. You already have, Magistrate Bell replied. You failed the moment you were born on that insignificant rock you call Earth. You failed the moment you evolved into being so fragile and short-lived. You failed the moment you thought you could stand among gods and be treated as equals. The chamber fell silent. Yuna looked around at the 12 council members. She searched for any sign of sympathy, any hint that someone might speak in humanity's favor. But there was nothing. Only cold alien eyes staring down at her with disdain. The vote was quick. 12 voices. 12 rejections. Not a single member of the Galactic Council supported Earth's request for membership. The decision was unanimous, but that was not enough for Magistrate Bell. He rose from his seat and addressed the chamber with obvious satisfaction. The Council has spoken. Earth is rejected. Furthermore, I move that humanity be banned from all galactic trade routes. They are not to participate in any form of interstellar commerce. Any species that trades with humans will face severe penalties. Any species that shares technology with humans will be expelled from the Council. The motion passed without debate. In a matter of minutes, Earth went from being a hopeful applicant to a complete outcast. Humanity was not just rejected. They were isolated, cut off from the rest of the galaxy, condemned to remain forever on their single world, looking up at stars they would never be allowed to reach. Una walked out of the chamber with her head held high. She did not let them see her pain. She did not let them see her anger. But inside, something was changing. Something was hardening into cold, patient determination. Tejo met her in the corridor. His face was tight with controlled fury. "What now?" he asked. Una did not answer immediately. She walked to the nearest observation window and looked out at the vast darkness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, her people, 7 billion humans who were counting on her. 7 billion humans who had just been told they were worthless. "Now we go home," Una finally said. "And we prepare. Prepare for what?" Una turned to face him. Her eyes were dry, but they burned with a fire that Tejo had never seen before. "They think we are weak. They think we will accept this judgment and disappear quietly. They are wrong. We will build. We will grow. We will become something they cannot ignore. And one day, when they need us most, they will remember this moment. They will remember how they treated humanity, and they will regret it." Tejo nodded slowly. He understood. This was not the end. This was the beginning. Earth had 50 years passed. The galaxy forgot about Earth. For the great powers of the Galactic Council, 5 decades was nothing. The Varan had been a spacefaring species for 12,000 years. The Cal had conquered their first star system before humans had invented writing. 50 years was a heartbeat. A moment, not worth remembering. Occasionally, some young scholar or curious trader would ask about the small blue world in the outer spiral arm. What happened to those primitive beings who had dared to request council membership? The answer was always the same. They went silent. They accepted their place. They faded into the darkness where they belonged. But silence does not always mean surrender. Sometimes, silence means preparation. On Earth, Ambassador Una had become Director Una. She was over 100 years old now. Her life extended by medical technology that humans had developed on their own. Her hair was white, and her body was frail, but her mind was sharper than ever. She sat in a massive underground facility that stretched for kilometers, beneath the mountains of Korea. This was the heart of humanity's secret project. This was where Earth was building its future. Te-Ho stood beside her, still alive, thanks to the same life extension treatments. He was now Fleet Admiral Tejo, commander of a navy that officially did not exist. He watched the holographic displays that filled the room. Each display showed a different aspect of humanity's growth. Ship construction, weapons development, population expansion, resource gathering. Everything was happening according to plan. "Report," Una said. A young officer named Du Yun stepped forward. He was one of thousands who had been born and raised for this purpose. His entire generation had been taught from childhood that they were preparing for something great, something that would change humanity's place in the universe forever. "Production is on schedule," Du Yun said. "We have completed construction of 4,000 warships. 2,000 more will be finished by the end of the year. Our weapons technology has advanced beyond initial projections. The engineers believe our main cannons are now equal to, or better than, standard Council military equipment." Una nodded slowly. "And our population? 12 billion on Earth, another 6 billion in the asteroid colonies, 3 billion on Mars. 1 billion on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Total human population across the solar system is approximately 22 billion. Tejo let out a low whistle. When they had been rejected by the Council, Earth's population had been 7 billion. In 50 years, they had more than tripled that number. The Council had never imagined that humans could grow so fast. Another officer, a woman named Yunji, approached with a tablet in her hands. Director, we have received confirmation from the Intelligence Division. The Council still believes we are confined to Earth. They have no idea about our expansion into the solar system. Their surveillance satellites were successfully disabled decades ago, and they have not replaced them. Good, Yuna said. The less they know, the better. What about the trade routes? We have mapped all major and minor trade routes in our region of the galaxy. We have also identified 17 species that were rejected or oppressed by the Council. Several have expressed interest in secret trade agreements with humanity. They are willing to share technology and resources in exchange for future considerations. This was perhaps the most important part of their plan. Earth could not build a galactic power alone. They needed allies. And the galaxy was full of species that had been treated badly by the Council. Species that had been conquered, exploited, or ignored. Species that had every reason to hate the great powers. Yuna had reached out to them quietly over the decades. She had offered friendship, respect, partnership, things the Council had never given them. In return, they had given Earth access to technology that would have taken centuries to develop alone. Faster engines, better shields, more powerful weapons. The Council thought they were keeping humanity primitive. In reality, they were only making humanity more determined to succeed. In another part of the facility, a massive training center was in operation. Thousands of soldiers ran through combat exercises. They practiced ship-to-ship fighting, ground assault, zero-gravity combat, emergency repairs under fire. Every possible scenario was covered. The training commander was a woman named Subin. She was 40 years old, born after the rejection, part of the generation that had been raised knowing nothing but preparation for war. She watched her soldiers with critical eyes, looking for any weakness, any mistake that could be corrected. A young recruit named Hyan approached her after completing his exercise. He was breathing hard, but his eyes were bright with determination. Commander, I have a question. Speak. Why are we training so hard? The Council banned us from space. They have no interest in us. Why are we preparing for a war that might never happen? Subin looked at the young man for a long moment. Then she walked to a wall and pressed a button. A large screen activated, showing the recording of the Council vote from 50 years ago. The voice of Magistrate Bell filled the room, speaking those words that every human knew by heart now. You failed the moment you were born on that insignificant rock you call Earth. You failed the moment you evolved into being so fragile and short-lived. You failed the moment you thought you could stand among gods and be treated as equals. Subin turned off the recording. That is why we train. Because they called us worthless. Because they called us insignificant. Because they thought they could crush our spirits with words and isolation. But they were wrong about us. They have always been wrong about us. And one day, we will show them exactly how wrong they were. Hyan nodded, his jaw tight with understanding. He returned to his training with renewed energy. In the shipyards of the moon, the largest construction project in human history was underway. Massive frames of metal and composite materials stretched across the gray surface. Workers in pressure suits moved between the structures, welding, connecting, and building. Each frame would become a warship. Each warship would carry weapons capable of destroying anything the Council could throw at them. Chief Engineer Mira supervised the construction from a control tower overlooking the yards. She was a genius who had revolutionized human propulsion technology. Under her leadership, Earth ships had gone from being primitive toys to being among the fastest vessels in the galaxy. She had done this not with alien technology, but with pure human creativity. She had looked at problems that other species had solved thousands of years ago and found better solutions. Different solutions. Solutions that no one else had ever considered. Status on the Vengeance class? She asked her assistant. Hull is 90% complete. Engine installation begins next week. Weapon systems will be ready within 2 months. The first ship of the class should be operational in 6 months. The Vengeance class. The name had been chosen carefully. These were not defensive ships. They were not exploration vessels. They were warships built for one purpose: to show the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. They were the physical form of 50 years of anger, determination, and wounded pride. Back on Earth, the surface looked peaceful. Cities continued to grow. People continued to live their lives. Children went to school. Adults went to work. There were farms and factories, parks and museums. To any outside observer, Earth would appear to be exactly what the Council expected: a small, quiet world that had accepted its place in the cosmic order. But beneath the surface, literally and figuratively, everything was different. Underground bases stretched across every continent. Secret facilities produced military equipment around the clock. Every able-bodied adult had received basic military training. Every child learned about the Council and what they had done to humanity. Every person on Earth knew that they were part of something larger than themselves. The government called it the Great Wait. They told the population to be patient, to prepare, to never forget the humiliation of 50 years ago. And they promised that one day, the wait would end. One day, Earth would rise. Director Yuna called a meeting of her senior staff in the final month of the 50th year. She stood at the head of a long table, looking at the faces of the men and women who had dedicated their lives to this moment. "We have done well," she said. "We have built a fleet that can challenge any power in the galaxy. We have developed technology that surpasses Council standards in many areas. We have grown our population and expanded across our solar system. We have formed secret alliances with species that share our grievances. In every way that matters, we are ready." Admiral Taiho spoke up. "Ready for what, Director?" "We have the power now. Do we attack? Do we reveal ourselves? What is our next move?" Yuna shook her head slowly. "No, we do not attack. We do not reveal ourselves. Not yet. We wait. Wait for what?" The old woman smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who had learned patience through suffering. "We wait for the galaxy to need us. We wait for the Council to face a threat they cannot defeat. We wait for them to realize that they are not as powerful as they believe. And then, when they are desperate, when they are terrified, when they have nowhere else to turn, we will appear. And they will understand what they could have had if they had treated us with." The first world to fall was a Voran colony called Talon Prime. It was a beautiful planet of purple forests and silver oceans. 300 million Voran lived there, going about their daily lives, completely unaware that death was coming from the stars. The Drac arrived without warning. The sky turned black as millions of their bioships descended through the atmosphere. Each ship was a living creature, grown rather than built, covered in thick armor made of organic material that resisted energy weapons. They had no windows, no visible engines, no technology that the Voran could understand. They were nature transformed into the perfect killing machines. The Voran military responded immediately. Defense satellites opened fire. Planetary shields activated. Ground-based cannons launched projectiles at the approaching swarm. For a moment, it seemed like the defenses might hold. Hundreds of Drac ships were destroyed in the initial assault, but for every ship that fell, 1,000 more took its place. The swarm was endless. It was like trying to stop a river with a handful of stones. The Drac crashed through the planetary shields like they were made of paper. They landed in the purple forests and began their harvest. The Drac did not negotiate. They did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. They consumed. That was their only purpose. They ate everything organic, plants, animals, people. They broke down all organic matter into raw nutrients that fueled the growth of their swarm. A single Drac could devour a living creature in minutes. 1,000,000 Drac could consume an entire ecosystem in hours. Talon Prime died in 3 days. 300 million Vorin were reduced to nothing. The purple forests were gone. The silver oceans were empty. The planet was a dead rock, stripped of all life. And the swarm moved on, searching for more worlds to consume. On the Galactic Council Station, emergency meetings were held around the clock. Magistrate Bow, who had once spoken with such arrogance about the worthlessness of other species, now sat in his chamber with fear in his 4 eyes. The Drac were heading toward the Vorin Empire's core worlds. His home planet was directly in their path. "We must combine our fleets," High Speaker Nix declared. The Kel leader was pacing back and forth, her green scales reflecting the lights of the holographic displays showing the swarm's advance. "The Drac outnumber us, but if we coordinate our forces, we can create a defensive line. The Kel Federation is willing to commit 5,000 ships," she continued. "But that will not be enough. We need every member species to contribute their full military strength." The council members agreed quickly. This was not a time for politics or pride. This was survival. Within days, the largest combined fleet in galactic history was assembled. 25,000 warships from 12 species formed a defensive wall around the Vorin capital world. Admiral Keth of the Vorin Navy took command of the combined fleet. He was a veteran of 100 battles, a tactical genius who had never lost a war. He positioned his forces with precision, creating overlapping fields of fire that would tear apart any enemy that approached. He was confident. 25,000 ships against an enemy that, despite their numbers, was technologically primitive. How hard could it be? The Drac taught him how hard it could be. The swarm arrived like a living storm. Millions of bioships darkened the stars. They came from every direction, swarming around the defensive line like insects around a light. The combined fleet opened fire, and space itself seemed to burn with the fury of their weapons. Drac ships died by the thousands, by the tens of thousands. But they kept coming. They crashed into the defensive line with suicidal determination, smashing themselves against the larger warships, trying to break through by sheer force of numbers. Some of the bioships lashed onto council vessels and began eating through their hulls. Living creatures poured into the corridors, slaughtering crews and consuming everything they found. The battle lasted 12 hours. When it was over, the combined fleet had been reduced to 8,000 ships. 17,000 vessels had been destroyed or disabled. Millions of soldiers had died. And the swarm, though damaged, was still advancing. They had lost perhaps a quarter of their numbers. But a quarter of infinity was still infinity. Admiral Keth ordered a retreat. It was the first time in his career that he had retreated from anything. He could barely speak the words. His voice cracked with shame and disbelief as he gave the order to fall back. The Vorin capital world fell 2 days later. This time, 2 billion lives were lost. Magistrate Bell escaped on a private ship moments before the swarm reached his palace. He watched from space as his homeworld was consumed. The magnificent cities, the ancient temples, the libraries that held 10,000 years of Vorin history. All of it was devoured, gone in a matter of hours. Panic spread through council space. Species that had considered themselves invincible suddenly realized they were prey. Worlds began to evacuate. Refugees flooded the trade routes. Military forces that had been trained for conquest found themselves fighting desperate defensive actions against an enemy that could not be stopped. The Kel Federation made a stand at their fortress world of Iron Gate. This was supposed to be the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy. 3 rings of defense satellites surrounded it. Automated weapons platforms numbered in the millions. The entire Kel fleet, the most feared military force in Council space, gathered for the final battle. The Drak hit Iron Gate with everything they had. The battle was visible from nearby star systems. Weapons fire created a constant glow around the planet. Explosions turned the void into a sea of fire. The Kel fought with desperate courage, knowing that if they fell, their entire species would be next. They fell. Iron Gate's defenses held for 1 week. Then the satellites ran out of power. The weapons platforms were overwhelmed. The fleet was destroyed ship by ship until nothing remained. High Speaker Nyx died on the bridge of her flagship, still giving orders, still fighting. Even as the Drak tore through the hull around her, now, there was nothing standing between the swarm and the heart of Council space. The great powers that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years faced extinction. Their combined military strength had been defeated. Their technology had failed them. Their pride had turned to ash on the Galactic Council Station. The remaining representatives gathered for what they believed might be their final meeting. Only 5 of the 12 original members were still alive. The others had died with their worlds. The chamber that had once been filled with arrogance and self-importance was now filled with fear and despair. "We must find allies," one of the representatives said. He was from a species called the Ven, peaceful beings who had always preferred diplomacy to war. "There must be someone in the galaxy who can help us. Some power we have not yet contacted." "There is no one," another representative replied. "We know every species in this region of space. We have contacted everyone with significant military capability. No one can help us. What about the species we rejected?" The Ven representative asked. "The ones we banned from trade. The ones we conquered and exploited. Perhaps if we reached out to them, offered them membership, promised them equality, they might help us." Bitter laughter filled the chamber. "Those species hate us. They would watch us burn before they lifted a finger to help. We treated them like animals. Now we expect them to save us? That is madness. Then what do we do?" Silence answered the question. No one had an answer. The greatest civilizations in the galaxy sat in stunned helplessness, waiting for death to find them. A young aide suddenly burst into the chamber, breaking all protocols. He was breathing hard, his crystalline body flickering with agitation. "The communications array. We are receiving a message. From outside Council space." "From where?" The coordinates trace back to an isolated star system in the outer spiral arm. A system that has been under observation ban for 50 years. The representatives looked at each other in confusion. Then, slowly, understanding began to dawn. Magistrate Bell, who had survived the fall of his empire, felt his blood turn cold. "Earth," he whispered. "The humans." The main screen of the chamber activated. A human face appeared. It was a young woman with dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a military uniform that the Council had never seen before. Behind her, visible through a window, was a fleet of ships. Thousands of them. Maybe tens of thousands. They were sleek and powerful, nothing like the primitive vessels humans had possessed 50 years ago. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the woman said. Her voice was steady and cold. "I am Commander Hana of the Earth Defense Force. We have been monitoring your situation. We have watched your fleets fall. We have watched your worlds burn. We have watched you face the consequences of your arrogance. Magistrate Bell tried to speak. Please, you must help us. The Drac will consume everything. Even your world. Even Earth. You must... Commander Hannah cut him off with a raised hand. 50 years ago, you stood in this very chamber and told our ambassador that humanity was worthless. You told her that we failed the moment we were born. You banned us from trade. You isolated us. You hoped we would disappear quietly into the darkness. She leaned forward, and her eyes burned with cold fire. We did not disappear. We prepared. And now you come to us, begging for salvation from the very species you treated like insects. The chamber was silent. The representatives could not meet the humans' gaze. We will save you. Hannah finally say the human fleet arrived exactly 6 hours after Commander Hannah's message. When they emerged from faster-than-light travel, the remaining council observers could not believe what they were seeing. 12,000 warships formed a perfect formation around the Galactic Council station. Each vessel was larger than anything the humans had possessed 50 years ago. Their hulls were smooth and dark, designed to absorb rather than reflect light. They moved in absolute synchronization. Like parts of a single machine dot, at the center of the formation was a ship that dwarfed all others. The flagship of the Earth Defense Force, named Awakening. It was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that glowed with barely contained power. Commander Hannah stood on its bridge, surrounded by officers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Status report, she ordered. All ships in position, her tactical officer replied. The Drac swarm is currently consuming a world called Velen in the Kel Federation territory. Estimated swarm size is 9 million bioships. The main hive cluster is in orbit, coordinating the consumption. Hannah nodded. Do we have a location on the Hive Queen? Yes, Commander. She is in the largest bioship, near the center of the cluster. If we destroy her, the swarm will lose coordination. The Drac are controlled by a collective mind, and she is its heart. Then that is our target. Set course for Velen. All ships prepare for combat. The human fleet moved through space with terrifying speed. Council observers watching from their stations reported that human ships were faster than anything they had ever recorded. They covered distances in hours that would have taken Council vessels days. Whatever technology the humans had developed in their 50 years of isolation, it was far beyond what anyone had imagined. On the bridge of the Awakening, Hannah received a message from Earth. It was Director Yuna, now over a century old, watching the operation from the underground command center. Her face was thin and tired, but her eyes still burned with the same fire they had held on the day of the rejection. Commander Hannah, Yuna said, you carry the hopes of all humanity with you today. 50 years ago, they told us we were nothing. Today, you will show them what nothing can become. Make us proud. I will, Director. We will not fail. Admiral Tejo also appeared on the screen. He was in a hospital bed, too frail now to command in person, but still determined to witness this moment. Remember our doctrine, Commander. Speed and precision. Do not get caught in a battle of attrition. The Drac can replace their losses faster than we can. Strike hard, strike fast, and do not stop until the Queen is dead. Understood, Admiral. Fleet will arrive at Velen in 3 hours. We will be in combat shortly after. The fleet emerged from FDL travel in the Velen system. What they saw would have broken the spirit of any other species. The sky was filled with Drac bioships. Millions of them swarmed around the dying world, ripping away its atmosphere, consuming its oceans, devouring every living thing on its surface. The planet looked like it was being eaten alive. Dear stars, one of the human officers whispered. There are so many. Hannah's voice was steady. They are many, but they are mindless. We are not. Execute attack pattern Alpha 7. Target the outer edges of the swarm. Draw them away from the central cluster. When the path is clear, the assault teams will advance to the Queen. The human fleet spread out into a wide arc and open fire. The first volley of weapons fire cut through the outer swarm like a knife through paper. Thousands of Drak bioships were destroyed in seconds. Their organic hulls, so resistant to council weapons, melted under the human assault like ice in a furnace. The secret was in the frequency. Human engineers had spent decades studying the limited data available on Drak biology. They had discovered that Drak organic armor had a resonance frequency that, when matched precisely, caused it to break down at the molecular level. Human weapons were tuned to that frequency. What had been nearly impenetrable against council forces was now as fragile as glass. The swarm reacted to the attack by turning toward the human fleet. Millions of bioships abandoned their feeding and rushed to engage this new threat. They moved in massive waves, trying to overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers. But the humans were not the council. They did not form defensive lines and wait for the enemy to come to them. They moved, constantly. Their ships danced through space at speeds the Drak could not match, striking from unexpected angles, then disappearing before the swarm could respond. Every engagement followed the same pattern. Appear, destroy thousands of enemies, vanish. Captain Ji Woo commanded one of the strike groups. He was a young man, barely 30 years old, part of the generation raised specifically for this war. He had never known a time when humanity was not preparing for battle. Combat felt as natural to him as breathing. Hard left, then up, he ordered his pilot. Fire pattern Delta on the cluster ahead. His ship twisted through space, narrowly avoiding a wave of Drak attackers. The main guns fired, cutting a path of destruction through the enemy formation. Behind him, the rest of his strike group followed, adding their firepower to his. In 3 minutes, they destroyed more Drak ships than the entire council fleet had managed in 12 hours of battle. Strike Group 7, reporting, Ji Woo said over the fleet channel. Outer swarm is scattering. We have a clear path to the central cluster. Hannah's voice came back immediately. All strike groups converge on the central cluster. Assault teams, prepare for launch. We take the Queen now. The assault teams were the most elite soldiers in the Earth Defense Force. Each one had been selected from millions of candidates. They had trained in zero-gravity combat, biological warfare, and close-quarters fighting. They wore power armor that enhanced their strength and protected them from almost any attack. They carried weapons designed specifically for killing Drak. Lieutenant Subin led the primary assault team. She was the same Subin who had once trained soldiers in the underground facilities of Earth. Now she was leading those soldiers into the most important battle in human history. Prepare for boarding, she announced over her team's channel. Remember your training. The Drak inside the hive ship will be different from the ones in space. They are defenders, bred specifically to protect the Queen. They are faster and stronger. But we are smarter. Stay in formation. Cover your partners. Do not let them overwhelm you. A dropship launched from the Awakening and raced toward the massive hive ship at the center of the cluster. Other dropships followed, carrying additional assault teams. The hive ship's defenses tried to intercept them, but human fighters cleared a path, shooting down anything that came close. The dropship crashed through the organic hull of the hive ship and skidded to a stop inside a corridor of living tissue. The walls pulsed with alien life. The air was thick and hot, filled with strange smells that made the soldiers want to vomit. But they had trained for this. They forced down their disgust and moved forward. Drak defenders appeared almost immediately. They were different from the space-based creatures. These were larger, more heavily armored, with multiple limbs that ended in razor-sharp claws. They screeched as they charged, their mouths filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. Subin opened fire. Her weapon, a heavy plasma cutter, sliced through the first defender like it was made of soft meat. The creature fell, its body already dissolving. Her team spread out behind her, each soldier taking their assigned position, each weapon firing in precisely coordinated patterns. The corridor filled with dying Drak. The assault team moved forward, step by step, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. Other teams were doing the same thing throughout the hive ship, all of them converging on the central chamber where the Queen waited. It took 2 hours to reach her. 2 hours of constant combat. 2 hours of horror and violence that would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. But they made it. The Queen's chamber was massive. It was a biological dome, kilometers across, filled with organic structures that defied human understanding. And at the center was the Queen herself. She was enormous, a mountain of flesh and chitin, covered in thousands of smaller Drak that served and protected her. She was the mind of the swarm. Every Drak in existence was connected to her through some form of biological telepathy. She turned to face the humans who had invaded her chamber. For the first time in her ancient existence, she felt something like fear. Subin did not hesitate. All teams, target the Queen. Fire everything. The assault teams opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cutters, explosive rounds, concentrated energy beams. Everything humanity had developed in 50 years of preparation was unleashed on the Drak Queen. She screamed, a sound that echoed through the minds of every Drak in the swarm. She tried to flee, tried to summon her defenders, but it was too late. The Queen died in a blaze of fire and destruction. Her massive body collapsed, and with it, the collective mind of the entire swarm shattered. Across the galaxy, millions of Drak bioships suddenly stopped. They floated aimlessly in space, their coordination gone, their purpose lost. The smaller creatures went into a frenzy, attacking each other, destroying themselves. The swarm was broken. On the bridge of the awakening, Hannah watched the data flowing across her screens. The Drak were dying. Not Jay,